Hi, it's Mike from Radio Parts. Here we're just going to have a look at the Aton products, in particular the DLA4 and the DLA6. So both of these products, the purpose of these products are to run audio to up to 4 zones in the case of the DLA4. So that might mean your kitchen, your patio, or if it's an office environment, 4 different areas. When we say 4 different areas, we're talking about stereo sound. Normally what will happen is you'll have, for example, a 2 or more zone amplifier where you'll have a 5.1 system maybe in the living room, and then you'll have zone 2 on your amplifier. So in the case of, say, a Yamaha RXV 675 or a 677, you'll notice that they'll have a zone 2 output. The zone 2 outputs will go into this, and then this will be able to change that zone 2 from just 2 speakers into 4 speakers. The Atons have a bunch of nifty features over and above what the basic speaker switches will have. And so a few of those features are control features. Having said that, as an impedance matching speaker selector, it also does a great job. So let's start from the start. DLA4, what does that stand for? It's a dynamic level adjustment. So dynamic level adjustment is a DLA, and 4 is for 4 zones, 6 is for 6 zones obviously. So this is the front panel. We've got some protective plastic across the front, but there's a couple of buttons, and then there's some LEDs across the top that will be illuminated. And those buttons relate to selecting your room, turning the product on and off, and volume levels. As well as that, you can actually program in some things. So, for example, you can program in a maximum volume level when you first turn on the product. So it might be a comfortable volume level, so that if you're having a party the night before, the volume was up very high. You don't want to turn on your sound system in the morning and be blasted. So you can actually default the volume level to a maximum. So it might be 5 out of 10 will be the default. So if you've had a party the night before and it's running 10 out of 10 volume level, it won't default back to 10 out of 10, it will default back to 5 out of 10 because you've set that at the maximum. If the night before you're just having a quiet night and it's only 3 out of 10, when you turn it back on, then it will be 3 out of 10. So you can set that for every room, and basically that's by pressing and holding the room button, and then pressing and holding the volume level button, and that'll default the maximum volume level for that particular room. You can also, you'll notice that within the same package you get a remote control. Sorry about the resolution of this camera, but one of the buttons on that remote control is called Scene. And what Scene means is that you can press and hold the on-off button on the device, and that will actually choose the volume levels on each of those zones when you first turn it on. So if it's 4 zones, then zone or room number 1, which is maybe the kitchen, will be 3 out of 10 volume level. The balcony might be quieter, maybe that's 2 out of 10. Maybe the study, if the volume's 0 out of 10, then by default that's off. So that volume button will be, particularly for commercial applications, a very useful button. So you turn up at work, someone's been fiddling around with the system, it doesn't matter, you just hit that Scene button, and then it will default back to the normal user settings. So that's a nifty little feature. So yeah, most applications, this will suit a lot of multi-zone applications. So what do you get? You get the unit, you get a remote control, you get a whole bunch of labels. So things like the Scene, you can choose a whole bunch of different labels. From here you can see pool, patio, outside, hall. You've got a whole bunch of different labels that you can literally just stick on, take off from there and put onto the unit. And then you get a great I love these things. I wish every product came with them, but a quick install guide, and this just tells you everything that you need to know. If you're familiar with this kind of product, it tells you all the basics of how to connect it up and how to use it, all with one page. So it's pretty good. All right, so the DLA4, we've had a look at the front panel. We've got that on-off button. We can set the maximum volume levels for each room. We can set scenes, so we can do a few things there. Now, the juicy bit for a lot of people will be looking at the back. Here I've just attached some 16 gauge speaker cable. For radio parts, we put related products down below the product. So this speaker cable is the gauge that's on that related products. So 16 gauge is a pretty good gauge for speaker cable. It'll cover around 10 meters of distance for a higher powered speaker, and lower powered ones you'll probably get 20 meters out of 16 gauge as a general rule. So what are these connectors at the back? And again, apologize for the resolution, it's probably a little hard to see. Your amplifier, whether it's a stereo amplifier, you might use say a McClellan Power Pro 300 or even a Yamaha RS 500 or something. You can plug your stereo amplifier in here. You've just got left and right speaker inputs, very easy to use. Put the speaker cable in, push it down, that locks it into place. Your zone 2 out on a multi-zone amplifier, the zone 2 would go in here. Anything from, say, a Yamaha 6 series amplifier and up tends to have zone 2 features. If it's below that, then amplifiers will have zone A or B, and that's fine. Chuck your B in there. Just be aware of the limitations of these amplifiers when it's A or B. If you can, and you're going to use multiple zones, use a proper zone amplifier, because you can run into some issues. Here you've got the power input. You get a plug pack included within the box, so that you just literally plug in. Inside here, each channel's rated 125 watts, so it's a good amount of power that you get. And I'm talking 125 watts RMS. You can feel by the weight, it's actually quite a substantial product. Sense input, that's useless for now. That's probably a feature that they may use in the future. Aton port. Now there's 3 different configurations that you'll tend to use. You might use just a product on its own, and it'll work perfectly well on its own. You have a infrared remote control that you can use to control it, and you have a receiver on the front, so you can control it just via this remote control. Number 2 way of doing it is using this Aton port. So that's just like a RJ12 plug in here, and then it plugs into one of Aton's RF receivers. So it takes it from being an infrared product to being a wireless product. The way that the products are set up at time of filming is that you can buy a pack with RF receiver included, and it currently is a cheaper way to buy it. So you get the unit plus you get the RF pack included, so you don't need to even think about it. And that RF receiver just plugs straight into the Aton port. So that's probably the easiest way for most people. As we move along the back, you'll notice IR emitter outputs. Now the good news is that if the unit's behind a cupboard or remotely located, you can still use it over an existing infrared system. So the 2 products that we tested it with, we plugged in the Pro 1141 IR emitters in here, and literally that's just plug and play. So you just plug them in here. So that's a Pro 1141. Yeah, so you've got the IR emitters, and then you've got IR targets, which are here. IR targets, you can have IR targets in each of the 4 zones. The IR targets, if you're going to use say third-party product or Pro 2 product, it would be 1141 emitters in here, and over here we're going to be running the 11 Pro 1178A is the one that we tested it on, and it probably works with other ones also. So the Pro 1178A. And the way you plug these ones in is it's just as per the product description for the 1178A. Yeah, you have the IR signal, which on the it's marked on the product IR. On the Pro 2, it's a white. One of the white cables plugs in here, and then you have here V for voltage. The voltage one is a black cable on a Pro 2 target, and then you have the G for ground, and the ground is a red conductor within the Pro 2 product. So yeah, going from there, you've got the white for IR. And then you've got the ground, which is the red, and then the voltage, which is black. So it'll work perfectly well with IR systems, according to our testing. So that's the IR emitters covered. Now you've got these two dip switches here saying Impedance Match. Is pretty cool. Most of the time it'll probably be set on 8 ohms for both, because most electronics are more or less aimed at being 8 ohms. So but on some occasions you'll have amplifiers that'll be running lower impedance, and more probably you'll have speakers that'll be 4 ohm speakers. So ideally we always want an impedance match. Well, we always want an impedance match, so that the system's running correctly and efficiently. So this gives you the option. You know, chances are it's both going to be set to 8 ohms for both of those. Now if we move across the back, yeah, the IR input. Now there's another option within the Aton. I explained the first two options, which is just using the infrared remote control, and whether you choose to use, say, Pro 2 products to extend that infrared, that's up to you. So that's the first option, the IR remote control. The second option is using the RF Aton product, or the RF kit, and that will give you the ability not to rely on line of sight. So I'd really recommend that, particularly for commercial applications where you might have a new user, they pick up a remote control. It doesn't matter where they point the remote control, it'll be easy. And you'll see within this very long one-page thing, you'll have descriptions of how to set all of these up. The third way involves these IR inputs once again. Now in this case it involves attaching another Aton product, the DLA keypads. So these keypads act as IR receivers, but you can also perform other jobs on these. You'll notice that the four inputs, what you use is standard Cat5. Again, on the Radio Parts website, we've got it listed below the product. So you attach your Cat5 in here, and then that just runs straight out to the wall plates. We've set up a kit to make it easy. So if you're going to get a DLA4, then there's a kit where you get 4 keypads for each of those areas. Keypads are nice. A lot of people are very familiar with that. When it comes to using a remote control, it probably involves a little more learning. But the keypads are more simple. So yeah, we've covered off the IR input, and finally we've got speaker outputs. Now, whether or not you're a believer in spending money on certain branded speaker cable, that's all up to you guys. The only thing I only ever really ask is that you use a maximum gauge possible if you want to be covered. So 16 gauge I think is what you're going to use. Again, open it up, insert your speaker cable, close it. I mean, it's as easy as anything. Yeah. So 3 systems to choose from, whether you go for a simple IR whether you go for RF for not line of sight, or whether you go for keypads. They're your three real choices. You have up to 4 zones, the DLA4, and up to 6 zones, the DLA6. Good product, solid, seems to work well.